The first sneeze hit like a sonic boom. Inside Lecture Hall C of the United Intergalactic Academy, where beings from 57 planets gathered to study xenobiology, galactic diplomacy, and quantum ethics, the explosion of sound caused immediate chaos. Pencils scattered. A Grelvax student flung itself into a vent. A Varnathi shrieked and dropped its translation note. The instructor, Professor Teln, who resembled a pile of floating blue moss, froze mid-telepathic broadcast. And at the epicenter of all this turmoil sat Franklin Pierce, a human exchange student from Wisconsin, blinking through watery eyes and holding a crumpled tissue to his nose. "Sorry," Franklin said, voice congested. "It's just allergies. No worries." No one heard him over the pandemonium. A red alert siren began echoing through the Academy's east wing. The room lights shifted to a pulsing yellow, indicating a minor biological threat. Teln finally snapped out of his stupor and attempted to calm the class through a series of rippling light pulses across his gelatinous surface. A few students understood the signal and slowly began resuming their seats, though more than a few remained pressed against the farthest walls. Franklin looked around, still sniffling. "Seriously, it's just allergies. Pollen, dust, whatever's floating around here. I'm not contagious." Professor Teln slithered onto the floor, his form reassembling into a vaguely humanoid shape. "Franklin Pierce," he said aloud in a tone that tried for calm but landed somewhere between strained and horrified, "please explain what just occurred." Franklin cleared his throat. "I sneezed. You detonated some form of internal pressure weapon." "No, no weapon. Just a sneeze. It happens. My immune system overreacts to harmless stuff sometimes, and bam, I sneeze. Loudly. Yeah, but no harm done." A long silence followed. A Freelian student raised one of its 6 limbs. "You expelled biological matter. At that velocity. Because of an overreaction?" Franklin nodded. "Pretty much." More silence. Then, without warning, 2 Grelvax guards entered the room, sweeping it with bioscanners. One of them gestured toward Franklin. "That's him," said a small Tharnian, still crouched beneath a desk. The sound pulse came from him. Franklin stood slowly, both hands raised in exaggerated innocence. "Guys, I swear, I'm not a bio-threat. I've had allergies since I was a kid. I'm not going to explode." The guards didn't seem convinced. They asked him to come with them. Franklin sighed and grabbed his bag. "This happens every spring back home," he muttered as he followed them out. They brought him down to the medical wing, which buzzed with various languages and smells that made his sinuses worse. An Elorian nurse scanned him from head to toe, then frowned at the results. "Elevated histamines, inflamed sinus tissue, and excessive mucus production," she said. "You're allergic to air particles." "Not all of them," Franklin replied. "Just some. Trees, pollen, maybe some alien spores floating around." She looked baffled. "Your species does this often?" "Yeah, I'm not special. I mean, I'm special. I got into this academy, but not because of my sneezing." The nurse slowly nodded and entered her findings into a data pad. "We will need to inform the Interspecies Health Board. Such a condition can easily be mistaken for a hostile biological event." Franklin groaned. "You're going to file a report about my nose? You emitted a sonic-level discharge that caused 6 minor injuries, 1 temporary neural shutdown, and a catastrophic data loss to the lecture room's central console." Franklin winced. "Okay, yeah, that's fair." Over the next few days, word of the sneezing incident spread like wildfire. Franklin couldn't walk the halls without students parting like a wave. Some were filters. Others carried small translation nodes broadcasting phrases like, "I am not edible," or "do not expel." Even Professor Telm began holding Franklin's assignments via remote transmission. A week later, Franklin was summoned to an interspecies orientation panel. It was chaired by a towering being known as Coordinator Vash, who looked like a tree made of coral. A dozen other officials sat in a semicircle, each representing a different planetary culture. They all watched Franklin with varying degrees of suspicion and curiosity. Vash addressed him in a deep, vibrating tone. "Franklin Pierce, you are aware of the chaos caused by your recent biological discharge." Franklin shifted in his seat. "Yes, sir. I've apologized, and I've been taking antihistamines since then. I even got a nasal spray." A Kidhari delegate tapped a claw on the table. "Explain why your species has not eradicated this malfunction." "It's not a malfunction," Franklin said. "It's just part of our biology. Allergies are annoying, sure, but you learn to live with them. Coordinator Vash leaned forward. You claim this is normal? Yes. Then demonstrate. Franklin blinked. What, here? Now. For the sake of interspecies understanding. I mean, I can try, but I think the meds are working. I haven't sneezed in 2 days. The Kidhari delegate muttered something about unverifiable biological threats, and Vash nodded solemnly. We must study this further. Franklin left the panel with a mixed feeling of relief and dread. Back in his dormitory, which he now shared only with a cleaning drone, he found a message waiting. He'd been reassigned to a special biological anomalies class taught by Dr. Revi, a Marnokian biologist known for her obsession with strange Earth phenomena. The next day, Franklin met her in a lab filled with samples from dozens of planets. Dr. Revi, a slender being with translucent skin and a voice like boiling water, greeted him with enthusiasm. You're the sneezer, she said. Guilty. I've read everything. The velocity, the range, the auditory disruption. Fascinating. I want to test sneeze reflex triggers. We'll begin with visual stimuli, then olfactory. Franklin stared. You want to make me sneeze? Repeatedly. Yes. This could open entire fields of immunological research. Over the next few weeks, Franklin became something of a celebrity in the biological sciences wing. He sneezed under lights, into containment fields, even into a special gel designed to capture air particles mid-discharge. Students lined up to observe. Some took notes. One fainted. During one session, after a particularly aggressive sneeze that knocked over a stack of sample dishes, Dr. Revi clapped her hands with glee. Incredible. The sheer force. You ruptured the casing on the Coron pollen chamber. Franklin rubbed his nose, eyes watering. That's not great, right? No, not at all. But it's very informative. Meanwhile, the rest of the academy remained wary. Instructors requested Franklin attend lectures remotely. Cafeteria staff offered him a private dining chamber. Even the cleaning drones began switching routes to avoid him. Despite everything, Franklin tried to keep a sense of humor. When he wasn't being poked by scientists, he worked on his thesis about human adaptability, using his own condition as an example. One afternoon, as he sat alone in the library working, a small figure approached Mira, a young Trallian student who had previously fled during his first sneeze. Can I sit? She asked, her voice soft. Sure, Franklin said, gesturing to the seat opposite him. Don't worry, I took my meds today. She tilted her head. My species has a similar reaction. Not sneezing, but a reflex when exposed to certain light frequencies. It makes us emit a pulse. Really? Yes. And once, during a field trip, I set off an alarm. They thought I was a weapon. Franklin chuckled. Well, maybe we should start a support group. She smiled at least. Franklin assumed it was a smile and sat down. They worked in silence for a while, and for the first time in weeks, Franklin felt almost normal. But normal didn't last. During a lecture 3 days later, the antihistamines failed. Franklin tried to suppress it, he really did, but the tickle built fast. He covered his face with both hands, turned away from the group, and let it rip. The sound shattered 2 translator notes. Panic erupted again. Students dropped to the floor. Professor Tellen dove behind his podium. Franklin stood frozen, tears streaming from his eyes. I'm so sorry, he said, barely able to speak through his raw throat. I took the meds. I really did. This time, he wasn't escorted away. Instead, Professor Tellen emerged, brushing off pieces of shattered translator casing. We must evolve, he said aloud. Franklin blinked. What? You are not defective. You are part of this academy. We must learn, as you do. The class quieted. One by one, students picked themselves up. A Varnathi offered Franklin a box of tissues. A Kidhari adjusted its translator and nodded. Franklin sniffed and smiled. Thanks. I'll try to warn you next time. Tellen waved a hand. Perhaps we will install buffer zones. Franklin chuckled. Like sneeze shields. Yes. For science. And for the first time since the incident, Franklin felt like he belonged. But the real test came later, during the Academy's Cultural Exchange Gala. Franklin was asked to present something uniquely human. He considered music, art, even hot sauce. But in the end, he stood on stage, held up a tissue box, and explained allergies. The crowd stared. Then he sneezed. Loud. Echoing. Honest. And no one ran. Franklin inhaled carefully through one nostril, held it, and exhaled through his mouth. The air inside the behavioral observation theater smelled faintly of something metallic and vaguely citrus. He couldn't tell if it was from the walls or the Centauri student beside him, whose skin glowed in pulses that matched its breathing. He didn't ask. The room was amphitheater-shaped, but instead of seats, there were semi-transparent compartments, each holding a different student species, all separated clearly not by chance. Franklin sat alone in a glass room labeled Human, Level 2 Biological Disturbance. There was a box of tissues in the corner and a floor vent that hissed every few minutes. A voice came through a wall-mounted speaker, calm and clipped. Begin baseline interaction sequence. Franklin raised his hand. Quick question. What exactly is a baseline interaction? A pause. Then, initiate natural dialogue with your nearest neighbor. He turned toward the Centauri, who was arranging its tentacles into symmetrical spirals. Hey there. You got a name. The Centauri's pulses shifted from blue to pale green. Zerthran. You may shorten it to Zer. You are Franklin. Correct. So Zer, what's the point of this room? Everyone's in a box. Feels like we're zoo animals. Our behavioral response to human biology is under review. They're recording instinctive reactions. To me. To your sneeze potential. Franklin rubbed his eyes. Wonderful. Zer's color shifted again, this time to a muted amber. I have never encountered a species that emits involuntary sonic bursts from the facial cavity. It defies most natural defense mechanisms. We evolved in a messy atmosphere. Everything's trying to kill us: mold, pollen, cats. You just get used to reacting quickly. Another voice entered the chamber, this one sharp and clipped. Subject Franklin, please describe the physical sensations immediately preceding a sneeze. Franklin leaned back against the wall. It's like your sinuses feel twitchy. There's this pressure behind your eyes, and your nose burns a bit. Then it all builds up, and bam, it's gone. A clicking sound followed. Zer's chamber brightened slightly. Franklin watched as a small device lowered from the ceiling in his compartment. It looked like a fan with a vial attached to it. Introducing Sample 49, the speaker said. The fan word. A fine mist filled the compartment. Franklin closed his eyes and took a shallow sniff. Nothing happened. Was that supposed to trigger something? Sample 49 contains protein particles from the native Relin grass. Known irritant in 72% of organic nasal systems. Never heard of it, Franklin said. Might need something more aggressive. Do you have any mold? From the Centauri compartment. Why would you request known allergens? Because they're trying to make me sneeze, sir. I'm trying to be helpful. A new mist sprayed from the ceiling. Franklin's eyes watered instantly. Oh, okay. There it is. Hang on. He turned, braced himself on the wall, and let out a sneeze that made the entire panel shudder. A second later, an alarm chirped. Zer's chamber lit up with a red glow. Franklin looked over. You good? I was not prepared for the acoustic magnitude, Zer said. My internal rhythm desynchronized. Temporary, I believe. The speaker crackled again. Subject Franklin, please remain still. Collecting post-sneeze aerosol data. Franklin sat on the bench, dabbing his nose. You know, back home, sneezing is just a thing. Nobody builds a science lab around it. Zer tilted their head. Back home, are you kept in separate environments for safety? No. We sneeze in public. On buses, in elevators, even during weddings. People might bless you or hand you a tissue, but that's about it. A second voice entered the speaker system low and clipped. Initiating next stage. Introducing shared space interaction. A panel slid open between Franklin's compartment and Zer's. Zer hesitated. Are your emissions currently active? Nope. I'm good. I think that last one cleared the pipes. Zer stepped in gingerly. Your species must have astonishing resilience. The body's ability to weaponize internal reactions is admirable. Honestly, we don't think about it that way. It's just part of being alive. Adaptability, then. I am curious, how does your society regulate these events? We don't. We just live with it. Take meds, drink fluids, or masks sometimes, but mostly we just push through. Zer coiled a limb and rested it on the floor. You consider this an acceptable quality of life? Compared to being eaten by a sand lizard? Yeah, I'll take mucus and some tissues. The panel to another compartment slid open, and a new figure entered. Tall, with a glistening exoskeleton and long antennae. Designation, Velk. Observation liaison. Franklin nodded. Hi, Velk. You here to study me too? Velk's mandibles clicked. I have reviewed your sneeze transcript. It has applications in sonic dispersion technology. You're kidding. Negative. Your nasal expulsion exceeded ambient echo thresholds. With study, it could inform non-lethal defense systems. So, my sinuses are a prototype now? Zur emitted a sound like water dripping into a deep well. You may become famous. Franklin rubbed his forehead. I just wanted to study xenodiplomacy. Maybe learn to cook with alien ingredients. I didn't know I'd be the subject of loud nasal warfare. Velk stepped closer, antennae twitching. Do you produce other involuntary sounds of comparable intensity? Franklin blinked. What, like hiccups? Demonstration requested. I can't fake a hiccup. That's not how it works. A third spray emitted from the ceiling again. Franklin ducked. Hey, give me 5 minutes to recover. Velk tapped a pad attached to its forelimb. Noted. Biological cool-down required. Franklin stood and stretched, careful not to trigger any sensors. You know what? This is starting to feel like a science fair where I'm the exhibit. Zur reached out a limb. You are helping us understand organic unpredictability. Glad I could be your chaos ambassador. The observation session ended 20 minutes later. Franklin was escorted back through a quiet corridor by a 4-legged assistant drone weaving between overhead pipes. As he passed the open door of the cafeteria, a group of students turned to watch. He gave a small wave and kept walking. Back in his dorm, the air purifier hummed softly. A new message blinked on his terminal. Invited. Panel on Human Passive Defense Mechanisms Time. Third cycle, mid-interval location. Symposium Hall Beta presenter. Franklin Pierce, he sighed and slumped into his chair. A minute later, the door buzzed. He opened it to find Mira, holding a small plant in a spherical pot. Peace offering, she said. From Earth. Filtered spores. Supposed to help clear the air. Franklin took the pot. You're giving me pollen to fix my pollen problem? It's symbolic. He set it on the desk. Thanks. I'll try not to sneeze on it. I read your sneeze was used to recalibrate 6 translator notes. Yeah, they're calling it the Pierce Reset now. Impressive. Terrifying. But impressive. She stayed for a while. They talked about the upcoming panel, about her project on scent-based memory, and about how alien plumbing worked better than Earth's. It was the first normal evening he'd had in a while. At midnight, after Mira left, Franklin sat on his bed and stared at the tissue box beside him. He picked it up, turned it over, and saw a message scrawled on the underside in careful pen strokes. Welcome to the galaxy. Stay unpredictable. He sneezed once more into the pillow this time and grinned. No alarm went off. 2 hours before the panel, Franklin stood in a quiet maintenance corridor behind Symposium Hall Beta, staring at his reflection in a panel of polished alloy meant for redirecting airflow. His eyes were red again. He sniffled. Unbelievable. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the small inhaler he'd been given by the Academy's medical wing, an adapted corticosteroid mist that was supposed to reduce inflammation in his sinuses. A 2-second spray into each nostril, and then he tilted his head back, waiting for the slight sting to fade. Footsteps approached. Not the sharp clattering of boots, but the steady ripple slap of something gliding. Franklin didn't turn around. You're early, said Dr. Revy. I'm also leaking from my face again. You were told to avoid the arboretum this morning. I didn't go in. I walked past it. Apparently, that's enough. Dr. Revy folded her limbs behind her back and examined him with scientific detachment. Your immune system is behaving predictably, at least. That's not comforting. I didn't intend it to be. Franklin dabbed at his eyes with the corner of his sleeve, then looked over. Do I still have to do the panel? I'm not exactly in top form. You are not contagious. You are not incapacitated. You are the subject of the study. This is your contribution. I feel like I'm being wheeled out as a cautionary tale. Dr. Revy blinked once, her species version of a shrug. The Academy has issued new guidance based on your input. You've already affected policy. Franklin sighed and pushed himself off the wall. Right. I'll go be a living footnote. In the green room behind the stage, Mira was adjusting the position of several small scent diffusers on a table. They released controlled puffs of Earth-derived aromas: basil, cinnamon, petrichor. She glanced up as Franklin walked in. You look terrible. Thanks. I worked hard on that. Do you want me to move the basil? It's on the moderate irritant list. No, it's fine. At this point, my nose has given up. She handed him a sealed bottle of water. You're sure you're okay doing this? They built a whole security buffer around the stage. If I don't show up, they'll think I exploded. The event began shortly after. The hall was full, only a few empty seats in the back, occupied by cautious-looking Drovox students wearing thin respiratory veils. Franklin stepped onto the stage, lights casting a dull orange glow across his face, and made his way to the podium. Behind him, a projected presentation displayed an image of a human respiratory system, annotated in 4 languages. He cleared his throat into the microphone. A few students flinched. "Don't worry," he said. "That wasn't a sneeze. Just a dry throat." No one laughed. He hadn't expected them to. "I'm Franklin Pierce," he began. "I came here to study interspecies diplomacy. Instead, I became a hazard symbol. You've probably heard about the sneeze. Maybe you saw it. Maybe you were one of the 7 people who filed incident reports." A ripple of movement in the seats. "I'd like to explain a few things. Not just about sneezing or allergies, but about how humans deal with stuff we can't control. Because that's really what this is about." He tapped the podium control, and a short video played footage of Earth. People walking through dense city smog, children covered in pollen during spring festivals, a woman on a park bench sneezing 5 times in a row, calmly drinking tea between each one. We live in a world full of triggers. Dust, mold, animal dander, food proteins. Our bodies sometimes treat harmless things like threats. It's uncomfortable, embarrassing, sometimes dangerous. But we adapt. He turned, gesturing to the screen. You see a sneeze. We see a reflex. You hear a sound like a plasma rupture. We hear someone trying to stay alive. A few students leaned forward. Today's panel was originally going to be about passive defense mechanisms. But I want to shift that a little. This isn't about defense. It's about resilience. He stepped away from the podium. I've been poked, scanned, isolated, and studied. All because my body reacts to foreign particles. But despite that, I'm still here. Still learning. Still trying to connect. He paused. And I haven't sneezed in 27 hours. Applause not loud, but enough. A few cautious claps, joined by more. Franklin exhaled, relieved. After the panel, he remained on stage for a Q&A. A Narati student raised a tendril. Do all humans experience this malfunction? It's not a malfunction, Franklin said. It's a hypersensitivity. And no, not all humans have it. But a lot do. It's common. Another student, this one with a triangular crest and bright yellow eyes, asked, why continue exposure to irritants if you know they cause discomfort? Because we can't avoid everything. We can try, but life keeps throwing stuff at us. We just figure out how to keep going. A soft clicking from the rear of the hall. Velk approached the microphone booth. Have humans developed biological countermeasures? Franklin nodded. Sure. Antihistamines, inhalers, air purifiers. Some people get immunotherapy, gradual exposure to allergens to train the immune system to calm down. Velk processed that. So your solution is to confront the source of distress repeatedly until your body accepts it. Yeah, Franklin said. It's not fun, but it works for some. Velk tapped a note into its pad. This aligns with human psychological conditioning. Exposure to fear to reduce its impact. Exactly. We're stubborn like that. After the Q&A, participants from various species approached the stage. A student from Siren Prime offered Franklin a vial of a local flower extract said to reduce inflammation. An Arisian researcher asked to compare acoustic waveforms from different human sneezes. Even Professor Teln appeared, holding what looked like a thick manual. This is the revised protocol for identifying non-lethal biological discharges, he said. Your contribution has been clarifying. I'll take that as a compliment. I offer it as factual observation. That evening, Franklin returned to his dorm and found the cleaning drone had left a new air filter unit by his window. A note was attached, certified for terrestrial pollen interception. Compliments of the health board. He sat on the bed, peeled off his jacket, and leaned back with a satisfied groan. Mira buzzed on the intercom and stepped in holding 2 cups of something warm and steaming. You survived. Barely. I watched from the back row. You didn't sneeze once. I was holding it back the whole time. My left eye was twitching by minute 11. Impressive restraint. He took a cup and sipped. What is this? Herbal decoction. No allergens. Tastes like licorice. I hate licorice. Good. That means it's working. They sat in silence for a while, the hum of the new filter settling into the background. Franklin stared at the small plant she'd given him days earlier. It had bloomed. A single, pale yellow flower rested at the top. He pointed to it. You think I'm still going to sneeze from that? Probably. He nodded. I can live with that.